All right. Hey, well, I have with me today Kevin Johnson from Configura, and welcome, Kevin.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
I appreciate your time and appreciate all the things that you've done with us over the years to help just talk about what we in education can be doing to help build better future employees through education. So the first question I had for you was when it comes to, and I'm not sure how much you were directly involved with the hiring process, but whether you were colleagues, what struggles that you are finding in your business that are facing when it comes to interviewing or hiring young people today? What are some specific things that you've dealt with?
Yeah, and I'm really involved in the hiring process here at Configura. I'll maybe give you a kind of a out of left field answer on this. I think one of the struggles that we're facing right now is that we as an employer have to be much more transparent and be much more involved in selling ourselves to new recent graduates that are going through the interview process with us. I think for a long time we had this idea that we ask the questions, we don't have to cater it much to the candidates because we do an awesome job here. People want to work with us, and people still do. But I think one of the things I appreciate about the younger, generation that we're engaged with right now is that they really spend the time to understand what they want out of an employer, what they want their day-to-day to look like. What's important to them outside of things like just base salary, and we've really had to shift the way that we present ourselves to candidates of all ages. But I think that's really been driven by students and by the younger generation. So that's something that we've really had to do. I know it's probably not exactly the type of answer that you were looking for there, but I appreciate the fact that people, and especially young people, are much more involved with knowing what type of environment they're going to excel in, what type of environments they don't want to work in, and putting us through the ringer a little bit, right? We need to be honest with ourselves about what we do well and what we don't, and present that in the appropriate way to candidates.
Okay, that's awesome. No, that is an outside the box answer, and I think that maybe is for some of our educators who will be watching this, or even students possibly, like, hey, listen, you're not doing everything wrong. Like, some of the things that you're trying to bring to the table is actually a good thing, because you're actually making our employers think too. It's just probably the approach. As long as you do it the right way, like, hey, why would this be a good fit for me, or how do I know this is a good fit for me?
Yep,
Good.
absolutely.
Awesome. So the second question I had was, what are some of the skills, however, when you are doing the interviewing, what are some of the, I don't know, red flags, whether it's during the interviews or even after you've hired some people, are like, oh, wow, here's some of the skills that we didn't realize that that just our people aren't coming with, and that we're seeing like this is a struggle and it's impacting our work here.
I think the biggest thing that I look for, and the thing that stands out the most to me right now, is someone who lacks the ability to kind of self-reflect, look back on individual situations and identify what went well and what didn't, and probably more particularly what their impact was. That's one of the things when I talk to students, I really try to hammer home is look, you're going to have all kinds of situations that shape who you are and the way that you're going to present yourself. And it's really important that you have a handful of examples kind of in your mind at any given time about things that went really well, things that didn't go well, and it's important that you're able to focus in on what your impact was in those situations and what you learned from them, right? So that the things that went well, you're able to apply that in projects and situations moving forward, and that's great. Things that didn't go well, we all make mistakes. I work for a technology company. We make mistakes all the time, but we learn from them, right? And so people being able to kind of look back on situations and kind of differentiate those things are really important. And I think one of the areas that I do maybe see young people struggle with a little bit more is the individual aspect of that. If you're in a group project and everything goes exceptionally well, that's fantastic. But we all contribute to that in separate ways. So I think that's one of the encouragements that I have with students is really spend some time to dissect those examples that have shaped who you are. And they don't need to be earth-shattering, revolutionary type of examples. Look back at a school project that was impactful. Look at a problem that you solved in your part-time job, but know how you impacted it and how that affected the way that you approached work the next day. That's the biggest thing for me.
That's good. And it's something you said, like, we all make mistakes. That's part of the process of learning. I think one of the things that, and this came up in another interview, students struggle with learning the idea of failing is okay and failing forward and learning, but learning from the mistakes. I think that's something in education we struggle with because this institution is set up to get the grade and get the score and do that.
Yeah.
But so we don't teach the idea of like, it's okay to get it wrong and figure it out, you know, and learn from it.
Our most experienced employees, I mean, we things go wrong, right? Like we do custom software and we're oftentimes doing really unique things for our customers. And not everything is going to go the way that you think it will that very first time. And that's everyone from our interns that work on projects up to the most experienced architects that have worked on our platform forever, right? So absolutely. Like I said, it's important for us that we learn from our mistakes. But man, we don't, you know, no one gets in trouble for making a mistake here, right? It's the way that we, you know, kind of redirect after the fact and what we learn from it, because mistakes happen consistently in our world.
For sure. Awesome. All right. So let me ask you, can you provide a story or example? I'm going to put you on the spot here where you had either somebody during the interview process or even more likely somebody you had hired, no names, just like somebody like, I can't believe that they didn't know this. And some we say that like, oh, that should be common sense. And I recognize too, you know, when another interview, common sense is not, I guess, as common as we thought it was. Maybe that's an eye opener. But tell me about a story where you had somebody who did something and you're like, did they just do that? Like, you know, like just a lack of career awareness, preparedness, or self-awareness?
Yeah. I have one situation that comes to mind, and I don't think it's like an end-all be-all type of situation, but something I worked with previously with one of our recent hires. One of the things I love about working in technology is your ability to come up with ideas and to impact projects is in no way limited to your seniority, right? I think the thing that's great about technology is that people can add significant value, whether they're, you know, in their first couple months on the job or if they've been doing it for 20 years. So we really encourage everyone to be able to speak up and share ideas. And I think healthy debate leads to really cool innovation as organizations. So we have all kinds of mechanisms in place to be able to support that. I think one of the things that I try to encourage, and I had this example with someone recently, is, you know, there is time for that healthy debate and for that kind of back and forth of ideas, but there's also a time where that becomes unproductive. So we need to make a decision as a group and move forward, and everyone support that moving forward. And that is an area where I've tried to work with employees, especially that are early on in their career, is just because we don't go forward with your idea, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a good idea. It doesn't mean that it wasn't, you know, a strong idea, but maybe someone had a higher level of experience. The suggestion that they made more sense kind of at the macro level, right? And it isn't necessarily that I was shocked or anything like this, but I think it's, you know, it's really important for people to realize in those situations that it doesn't say anything bad about you. You know, it's, you know, we're all learning in these situations, but it also gets to a point where we need to back that decision. You know, we can debate behind the scenes and work through all of those situations together. But once a decision is made and we're in a project meeting after the fact, we can't, you know, vocalize the how upset we were that our decision wasn't made. You know, we need to have a unified front moving forward. So, you know, that's something that stands out to me at times. And I think I make the assumption sometimes that everyone's aware of that, and that's not the case. So it just requires some reinforcement at times that, like, look, we want everyone to speak up. Sometimes our ideas are not going to be chosen. And when they're not, you know, I get that. We can be disappointed about that, but we also need to be able to move forward and continue to make progress on the initiative that we have at hand.
So what I was taking from what you said, because you were trying to be very eloquent and polite in your response, but essentially what I'm hearing is sometimes when people's ideas aren't chosen, we can't have a little hissy fit or derail the project or grumble and complain because our ideas aren't taken. And that actually is hindering the rest of the team and the rest of the project or undermining it. But just recognizing that your idea is a good idea, but it might not be the right for right now. And you have to still get back on board, even if it's not your.
Yep, absolutely. Because once that decision is made, progress moving forward is really important. And if we're not all on the same page supporting that, it can slow us down during that phase. So
Be
you
honest,
said it in a great way. Yep, absolutely.
let's be honest, it affects all of us. What it is it's, for lack of a better word, a professional
Mhm.
tantrum, right? Right? Professional
Yeah,
temper tantrum where we don't get, and we all have those, but
yeah.
I've seen young people, it's a big, big problem.
Yeah, and I'll say I see it on all ends of the spectrum, right? So I think there's things that recent additions to our team, they can learn from those situations. I see it just as much with experienced team members as well. So this isn't just a student thing or a recent graduate thing. I think all generations struggle with this. So while I encourage students to have this in mind, I also encourage our more experienced senior level members of the team to consider the same thing. I think the approach they take might be a little different, to get them there, but the message is the same regardless.
Excellent point. Yeah, that is something I think is working on. All right, I'm going to flip the script a little bit. So now
Yeah.
we're going to talk to educators, talking to some educators. What would you say to them to try and help them? And I think if I'm not mistaken, you have a spouse who's in education, right?
Yeah.
So this is close to you. So maybe not talking to your spouse, but talking to everybody else. What would you say to them to try and convince them of the critical nature of making sure students are graduating prepared with these skills for the workforce? Why is it so imperative?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I'll say to teachers in general is just thank you. Eric, you're right. My wife's a teacher, and I know how difficult the profession of education is through her, in general. And then you throw in the pandemic, and it feels like this past year, especially as we've kind of been in the middle of this for quite some time, is extremely difficult. So first off, thank you to everybody who chooses every day to go in and engage with students and engage with their colleagues and the administrators, because it's so critically important. With that being said, the thing that I would encourage all educators to keep in mind, and I think in general everyone does a good job of this, is everyone has their core function or their core area of study that they're responsible for teaching kids, whether it's science or math or the arts, phys ed. They're all critically important. And just as important as those core skills that we're teaching people are the ability to interact well with others, to be able to communicate what we're feeling, to be able to deal with successes and failures. I'll go off on a 90-second tangent here. I hear a lot of conversations about culture at companies, and what makes up culture within organizations. And I work for a tech company that has a pretty cool environment, right? We're pretty casual, we got video games places. We have a pretty awesome place where we get to come into work, but I don't think that defines our culture, right? Our culture is the way that we celebrate successes together, the way that we deal with failures, the way that we provide really cool, innovative solutions to our customers, and the way that we work together to make that happen. So that's what's core to an organization's culture. And those things can be taught regardless of discipline in school, right? It's dealing with success in a gracious way. It's learning from our failures. Those have such a big impact, regardless of what someone's going to do after they finish school. So I would just encourage you to keep that in mind. I know everyone's tied to growth measures in your discipline, and I know there's all kinds of uniquenesses, but we're also creating really well-rounded people, and I think teachers get that. But those things are super critical to the work that we do every day within the office.
For sure. All right. Following that same theme, looking back on your high school self, all right, looking back like, oh yeah, no wonder it's so hard for teachers when you look back to when you were in school. But what advice or suggestions would you have for teachers, looking back on your own experiences, that you might have said, oh, if only I had done this, that would have prepared me for this, because man, I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, and first off, I look back at myself as a high school student now, and I don't fault the teachers for any difficult situations that I had there. Putting myself back in the shoes of a high school age boy is tough to do. So I own every mistake and every failure I made along those ways. I think the one thing that I would encourage, I think one of the things that would have been really impactful for me and I don't know if this didn't happen or if I just blocked it out and don't remember it, was teachers being open and transparent around impact after school, outside of school. You know, Eric, we've worked together over the years. I would have loved more of an opportunity to be able to talk to people about, you know, career options and what's, you know, available after high school, right? I mean, maybe those things were there. I don't think I remember it being emphasized as much. I graduated in 1999, so I'll date myself a little bit here. I know the ISD was involved there. I don't remember having a lot of opportunities for teachers to be able to share what those options could be. I wish I had that, you know, but like I said, I don't know if I put that on the teachers or just a, you know, really squirrely, energetic high school kid who didn't know what to focus on at the time. But all those things would have been beneficial looking back. So that's why I think the work that you do, the work that I've been able to engage with teachers is so important, because I think we obviously can teach them the discipline that we're responsible for teaching them day to day. But we can also, you know, foster curiosity in a way that can make maybe their path a little bit more efficient than the one that I took.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm sure some of it probably isn't on the education side. Some of it, I think, is probably system. It's a system. And I think the system is getting better at recognizing the partnership that has to happen between school and business. Whereas before they were very siloed and separated. And now we're starting to see like, well, hold on, if we're supposed to be getting ready for this, then why are we not interacting with them? I think it's getting better, but some of it is probably, I can just test the same. I'm sure there's a lot that I was oblivious to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Final question. This is an easy one. And I think I probably know the answer, but regularly hearing from employees, you mentioned culture. So culture actually something that I've been hearing a lot from businesses actually saying like culture really does matter. And as opposed to, as some businesses, you know, we all say it, we say our values are important and our mission statement and they're posted, but a lot of people couldn't state them. But I've heard from a lot more employers these days who are talking about like their culture really is a lot. And we have like, we talk through our culture and it's part of what we do. All right. That said, which would you say is more important to your organization? Having strong technical skills that you can build around, or these employability or essential skills that other people are saying? And if so, which one and why?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to not like give a cop-out answer here, but they're both pretty darn important, right? So we're a technology company. The vast majority of our employees are software developers, they're engineers. You know, there's a certain level of technical knowledge and understanding that comes into play here. Now that can look very different. I think that's one thing that's really cool in the 20 plus years that I've worked in industry now, is that there's a lot of ways that people can get that training and that exposure. It can be an undergraduate program. It can be a 2-year anniversary or university. It can be going through programs at KCTC with very technical focuses. We've hired people 18 years old right out of KCTC with a development background. We've absolutely made that work. So the technical component is important, right? But the personal skills, the communication, the collaboration, the working together is on par with that, right? Both are critical. We evaluate both during our interview process. If someone excels on the technical side of things, but we don't feel is going to be able to collaborate well together and work well within a team, we're not going to move forward with that person, right? It doesn't fit the way that we get things done as an organization. So I'm not trying to cop out of your question here, but the answer is we evaluate both. We look at both. You know, it's part of our interview process. It's part of our performance evaluation process. And not only doing really cool things technically, but also making sure that, you know, we're supporting our values around team player and collaboration. Those are critical to the success of people within our organization.
All right. Yeah, you kind of skirted that one a little bit, but I see where.
But they're both true. They're both true. It's true. It's honestly, like I said, it's true because we truly interview for both. We evaluate performance based on both. So it's hard for me to pick one over the other.
Very fair. Hey, Kevin, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And thank you on behalf of Configura for the time that you volunteered for educators to hear a little bit about employability skills.
Absolutely. I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks.
Thanks so much.